Hello, it's Jim Games here once again and welcome to this new Unreal Engine 5 tutorial. In this video we are going to start creating the inventory system, and also people have asked me how to turn off these red things when we walk. So let's also fix that quickly. So yeah, let's get started. So first, to fix those markers, we want to go to the animations and to the APP player. Because here we have our get food heat on ground. Okay, and here on the line trace by channel, we want to change this draw debug type to none. Compile, save. Now when we walk, see, there are no more of those. So yeah. So let's start creating the inventory. So let's go to the blueprints and let's actually create a new folder, and let's call this structures. Okay, let's open it. Now we want to right click, move our mouse somewhere from here and search for a structure. And this first structure will be called inventory struct. Okay, now we can duplicate it and rename this second one to be item struct. Like this. Now let's open the inventory struct first. So we want to add a variable here. And actually now we have two, we will need two. So the first one will be called item ID, and I already made a mistake, but yeah. Oh, I will have to change it to something else, and then I can fix it like that. Item ID, and we want to change this to be name. Okay, and the second variable will be called amount, and it will of course be integer. Okay, now we can save and we can close this inventory struct. Now let's go to the item struct. Here, the first variable will also be called item ID, and the variable type will be name. The second variable will be called icon, and the variable type will be texture. Now we have to find this one, texture object reference. Okay. And the third variable will be called max stack size. This will of course be integer. And the fourth and the last variable that we will create now will be called description. Okay, and it will be type text. Now let's go to the default values and let's change the max stack size variable default variable to 1. Okay, we don't have to do anything else. Now let's save, let's close. Now let's go to the blueprints and let's create yet another folder, and this will be called data tables. Let's open it. So let's create a data table. Now we have to select the row structure, which will be item struct. Let's click OK. Let's rename this to be items dt. Okay, let's open it. And let's add a row. Now here, let's rename this first row to be test. And let's also set the item ID to be test. Icon, we don't have to set anything, and max stack size can be 1. Okay, then let's create another row. Let's call this like test2. also item ID test2. And let's set the max stack size to like 3 maybe. So now we can try the inventory that it works when we have created it. So let's save. Let's actually close this. Now to the blueprints, and we want to actually create a yet another folder, and this will be called actually let's call it components. Let's open it, and let's right click and let's create a blueprint class type actor component, and this will be called bbc underscore inventory. So bbc for blueprint component. Now let's open it. And here what we want to do. We want to first create a new variable. This will be called inventory size, and it will be type integer. Now let's compile so we can access the default value. I want to set this to like 12. Maybe even less. Let's actually set it to like 8. Okay. Now let's create yet another variable. Let's call this content. Now we want to change the variable type to inventory struct, the structure that we have created. And now the variable type to from single to array. So now we can add here these variables. See? So the next variable that we have to create, we don't actually have to create it yet. Let's delete the event tick. Let's leave the event begin play. Okay, and now let's right click and get player character. Let's get it here. From the return value, let's cast to VP player character. Okay, so when the game starts, we will cast to our player. And now we want to promote this to a variable, and I want to rename this to be player ref, and I want to move it up here. Okay, so now we have the reference to the player. Now we can actually start creating the code. So let's compile, let's save, let's create a new function. This first function will be called add to inventory. Okay, and here what we want to do, let's first add a sequence, so S and left click. Then let's click on this input node and let's add a input variable, and this will be called item ID, and the variable type will be name. Second variable will be called amount, and it will be type integer, of course. So now what we want to do, let's get from the amount and let's promote it to a local variable like this. Let's add some reroutes to here. We don't yet have to add anything to here, but later we will do it. So let's rename this local variable to be called amount remaining. Okay. Now what we want to do next is we want to right click and leave some space here. We want to while loop like this. Now we want to check from the amount remaining if it's greater than 0. Okay, so when we have some items still to be added to the inventory, then we can call this loop. Okay, now let's get a AND boolean. Then we want to create yet another local variable. This will be called inventory full, and it will be type boolean and single like this. Now let's get it here. Let's get a not boolean. So when the inventory is not full and we have still items still to be added, then we can continue with this code. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to create another function, and this will be called find existing slot. Okay. And here let's add a input, and let's call it item ID. And let's change the variable type to name. Now let's go back to the add to inventory, and let's call this find existing slot here on the loop body. Okay. And yeah, now we want to, let's actually leave some more space. Let's get from the item ID and let's search for a item ID. And you can see the variable item ID here, even though we don't have that kind of variable. And why is that? I will explain. When you add an input to this input node, this item ID and this amount, you don't have to promote it to a variable to get access to it. This we promoted because we will have to change it later here. Yeah, you can also see we can get the amount from here, which is this one. But yeah, okay, now we have passed the item ID here. Now let's open the find existing slot again. Now we have to do some little things here. So let's first get our content. From here, let's get a for each loop. That. And what we want to do, we want to first split the array element so we can get the item ID and amount. So first what we want to do, we want to get the array element item ID, and we want to check if it's equal. And what we want to check that it's equal to will be this item ID here. So let's get the item ID. So we're checking if the item on our content, so in our inventory, has the same item ID as the item that we are adding. Okay, and then let's add a branch, so be a left click from the loop body, like that. Let's actually move it a little bit upwards. Okay, then we want to add another branch here after, so be a left click. And let's actually just a little space here. And what we want to check here is if the stack still has room in it. So what we have to do next is we want to create another function, and this will be called get item details. Okay. And here we want to add an input, which will be the item ID. Now what we want to do, we want to right click and get data table row. This here at the bottom. Let's actually make it our favorite. Get it here. Now let's select the data table asset, which will be the items data table, and let's connect the item ID to the row name. Now let's click from here and let's add an output node. Now let's move this to here so we can add the pin, or you can just add the item struct type pin. Now let's delete the new parameter and connect from the row found. Now we have function that we can just pass an item ID so we can get the details of it. Okay, compile and let's just to be sure. Now we can close this function. Sorry, one more thing. Let's select this function and let's make it pure like this. Compile and let's close this. Now let's create yet another function, and this will be called get max stack size. Okay, we don't necessarily have to create this. We can get it from this function also, but let's make this so the code on the add to inventory will be much cleaner. So here what we want to do will be, we want to get the get item details here. Let's pass this to the input. So we have item ID here. And where is the output? Oh, let's click on here to add the output. Let's move it to here. Let's delete the new paragraph, paragraph, well, I don't know what I'm saying. And now, this get item details, let's split the out row so we can access the out row max stack size. Let's move it to here, add pin to node. And yeah, and let's also make this pure. And let's rename this to be just the max stack size. It looks better, in my opinion. Compile, save, and now we can also close this function. And now here on the find existing slot, what we want to do is we want to get from the array element amount, and we want to check if this is less. Let's check it under here maybe. Yeah. And we want to, let's move the item ID here. Now let's get the get max stack size. Let's get it to here. And we want to check if this amount on the content array is less than the max stack size. And let's connect the item ID also here. And let's select this and press Q to align. Actually, oh, we have to align it again. But yeah. And actually, let's move this a little bit further down and this upwards to here. Like this. So let's connect this to the this condition here. So now we're checking if the amount is less than the max stack size. Yeah, so basically if we have room on the stack. Okay. And then what we want to do, let's get from the true, let's get a return node. And here we want to add few outputs. The first one will be called slot found. And let's change the type to Boolean. And the second one will be called index, and it will be type integer. And the third one will be called room in stack. So this will be how many more that stack fits basically. And now here, let's set the slot found to true like this. And the index, we want to actually get from this array index. Let's connect it to the index. Let's add a reroute and move it up here so it looks cleaner. Also another reroute, and let's move it maybe so it matches this one. I always like to make these match these lines, you know, like these are basically at least almost matching. Yeah, now they are better. No, this is not. But yeah, so when we find the correct item ID and it has room on the stack, we will pass the index, set the slot found to true, and room in stack. Now, how we can get this value? We want to first here on the amount, we want to add a reroute to here. Maybe to here, yeah. And then we want to get from the max stack size, and we want to minus from it. We want to minus this value. Let's add another reroute to here. Now I want to align all these like that and like that. Okay. So we're getting the max stack size, and we are subtracting the amount on the inventory basically. So we get how many it has, how much room it has left. Okay. Now here we want to compile, save, and we can actually close this. This is already done. Now let's go back to the add to inventory. And now here, let's add a branch, B and left click here, and let's check if we found a slot. Simple as that. And if we did, then what we want to do, we want to create yet another function. This will be called add to stack. Okay, and this add to stack will have two inputs. The first one will be called index, so the stack index, and it will be type integer. And the second one will be called amount, of course, how many we want to add. And here we want to get the content inventory struct, so basically our inventory content, like it says. And let's leave some space here. Let's get from this, and we want to set array element. Well, let's connect from here. And to the index, let's connect the index. Simple as that. And to the item ID, what we want to do, we want to get the content again here. And we want to get a copy. And we want to get the index also to here. Add some reroutes. Let's align. And let's actually move this a little bit further up. Like this. So we're getting the index from the array also, from the content array. Let's split it so we can get the item. Oh, we have to split this also. Get the item ID here. And the amount, what we have to do, we want to just add here. And we want to add this amount. Like that. And align and connect here. And yeah, simple as that. So yeah, we're getting the index, we're getting the item ID, we're getting the old amount, we're adding the new amount, and we're setting it. Compile, save, and let's close this. Now back to the add to inventory. Here on the true, let's call the add to stack. True. Okay. And the index we want to get from here. And the amount, what we want to do, we want to get our local variable amount remaining. And we want to clamp the value. Let's actually move it a little bit under here. We want to clamp that max value to this room in stack, so we cannot add more than we have room on the stack. Let's connect this to the amount. Right? And yeah, after that, what we want to do, we want to get the amount remaining again. We want to subtract, so minus from it, and connect this value to there. Let's make it look a little bit better with that. Yes. And then we want to set the amount remaining, of course, this new value. And after that, let's just print a string. And let's call this add to stack, so we can see that it has worked, basically. So yeah. Now let's actually move this all a little bit further. Maybe like, I don't think these lines look that good, but yeah, it doesn't matter. Now from the false, let's get from it and let's add a branch to here. And what we now want to check, we have to actually create a new function. That new function will be called inventory has room. And here, what we want to check, we want to get the content. We want to get the, I can write length, and then we want to check if that's less than our inventory size. So if our inventory size is 8, the content length is 7, then we have less. If it's 8, so the same, then we don't. Let's align these and press Q. Sorry, select and press Q. Let's add a output, move it to here, connect this to here, delete that one. Or you can just, like I sometimes get the return node by adding output, or sometimes I just search for it, but yeah, it's the same thing, it doesn't matter. And now let's rename this boolean to like has room. And let's make the whole function pure. Compile and let's say all. Now we can close this. Now we can get the inventory has room function. So it will check it. And by that, we will continue with the code. So the code on the true, we have to create yet another function, but this will actually be the last one on this video, on this system now. This will be called create new stack. And this create new stack will have two inputs, the item ID, which will be name, and amount, which will be integer. Okay. And now what we want to do, we want to get our content and leave some nice space here. Here we want to add array. Let's connect it to here, like that. And now this, we want to split it so we can get the item ID, which we can straight away get from here. Let's add a reroute. Okay, it's not. Yeah, it's cool, good enough. Let's actually leave it here. Yeah, and from the item ID, also we want to. We want to get the get max stack size from here, like that. Now to the amount, we want to select integer. You can also use the normal select thing, but it has these flipped. So if we use the normal select, you can see if we connect a boolean here, the true is at the bottom, here the true is at the top. You have to just switch those if you use the different one. Okay, let's connect this to here. And now we want to check if the amount, amount here is greater. Let's get it to here, connect to here. And let's add a reroute. Yeah, greater than max stack size, as you can see. And if it's not, we want to get the amount here. Actually align this. But if it is, then we want to get the max stack size, and actually we have to align it again. So yeah, so if the amount is greater than the max stack size, we will get the max stack size, of course. And if the amount is less, then we get the amount. Okay, simple as that. And now we want to add a return node. Return node. And we want to add an output called amount added. This will be called type integer. Now we want to also get this same value from here to here, and add a reroute here and compile and save. Simple as that. We can close this. Now here on add to inventory, from the true, we want to call this create new stack. Actually, sorry, I want to move this to the same line with this, and this can be wherever it wants to be, basically. Okay, And now the item ID, it will of course be the item ID. And the amount will be amount remaining, not the, don't get it from here like, not this one, amount remaining. So this one here. Otherwise it will try to add more than we actually want. And then after that, we want to get the amount remaining again. And we want to subtract from it this amount added. Like that. And then we want to set it. Now we have to move this whole thing a little bit further down and connect to here. And now I also want to make this match with the top one. Then we can just copy this print string from here. Let's call this new stack. Now the last one here on the false, which actually I want to move even further, like that. So here on the false, what we want to do, one simple thing. We want to set this inventory full to true. Like that. So if we don't have any room on the inventory, we want to set it to the inventory to be full. And let's also print string. Let's say here inventory full. Simple as that. Now let's go back here to the start where we have this sequence that we added. Here we want to just get this and get a return node. And to this return node, we want to add an output called added. So it tells us if we have added items or not. Let's make it Boolean. Now we want to get the inventory full. And we want to get not Boolean. So if inventory is not full, we will return as true. And if it is, it will return as false. Okay, compile and save. So I think we actually have all these things working here now. Okay, let's actually do one more thing. Let's click on here and let's call this, rename this to be added all. And let's add another output called remaining, and let's change it to be integer. Okay, I almost forgot this one. And I will actually move this to here. And now let's get the amount remaining. So if we cannot add all, we can pass this remaining value to the item. So yeah. Now let's compile and save all. But yeah, I actually think that was all for this video. In the next episode, we will create some test item or something like that, so we can test that all this works. I haven't tested it before, so I know that it works. But yeah, still let's do it. But yeah, so if you liked the video, please click the like button and subscribe for more. And yeah, hope you have a great day and see you on the next one. Bye.